Go live now, and it should be 5 seconds. It's live.
Well, welcome everybody.
You can start now.
Lovely to see everybody. I hope everyone's had a lovely day. Bruce, welcome. Lovely to have you with
Thank
us.
you.
And yeah, we're very interested in your topic of simply wild hydrotherapy. Looking forward to your message. And that, so we'll So just a little bit about you, Bruce, just so that the people that will watch this at a later time. So you're a qualified physiotherapist who's been
Correct.
using and teaching hydrotherapy for 40 years. That's fantastic. So hydrotherapy is traditionally used for acute problems. And I guess recently you've been reading an experience that has led you to the realization that applying this wisdom with of the old-time hydrotherapists to the modern methods of heating and cooling the body is an effective way of dealing with lifestyle and non-communicable chronic diseases. That's fantastic. We look forward to that, bringing the old with the new. Yeah. So look, we'll open in prayer.
Yeah.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just want to thank you, Lord, for that you are the creator and you are the healer, dear Lord. And we want to thank you for your health messages and what you've done through your life with us and through our prophet Alan White, and what you will do with Bruce today, and that the message that you will send out through him. Bless him, and we look forward to hearing his message. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you for that prayer, Mara, and that we can have a message through me. I pray that that's what happens tonight. Tonight, I'm going to very quickly tell you what we're going to do. First of all, I assume that most of you have some idea of therapy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that?
I do.
Nod your heads if you know a little bit about hydrotherapy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hang on, I think everyone seems frozen at the moment. No, is that incorrect?
You were frozen, but we're okay.
Okay, my internet connection is unstable. Okay, I'm not sure what that meant. Okay, so basically what I want to do tonight is to make, show you my traditional hydrotherapy website and how to use it. Then I want to tell very briefly a story about Mrs. White that happened here in Australia back in 1893 and how it's affected the way I practice nowadays, because it made a big difference when I read it back in 2022. I read the story and it confirmed a lot of things that I had sort of brewing in my brain, but also it made me realize that the hydrotherapy that's generally done these days and taught is very different to what was in the textbooks that Dr. Kellogg and my favorite hydrotherapist, Dr. George Knapp Abbott, wrote in the early 1900s. And so I'm going to explain that difference. And the words "simply wild" are a direct quote from Mrs. White. She called the therapy they were doing simply wild, in the negative sense, unfortunately, because there are beautiful ways that God's given us, and just recently, since 2020, I've learned probably more about hydrotherapy, and I thought I knew about it, than I had for a long time. So if I share my screen, is there a way I can do that? Yeah. So I can just go to change. You will see
down
what
the bottom. There will be a green. It will be in green. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'll do is I will share my so I'm actually sharing this screen that I'm on now, but I'm going to go back to so can you see the traditional hydrotherapy page? Is that what you're seeing?
Yes, we can.
And if I change to this one, can you see Simply Wild?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Okay, so I just have to change the tab. All right. So I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to use tonight, and what I want you to do is to write down that address down there, because that's the key to all this. So it's bit.ly. And Benji, did you send this link to people? But this is the key link. You need this one. bit.ly /
Yes, I sent it.
Okay, Prac Hydro. So that's the key address. You only need to remember one address tonight, and that's it, because this will give you all the rest of it. And that takes you to this practical hydrotherapy website, which is where we are here. And this is what when my wife and I teach sessions, this is the website, and this is the sessions we do. And what you have on this page are links to like hot foot bath, and it takes you to, on the website, how to do a hot foot bath. So if you have that link, it takes you to this page, and you don't have to go hunting for things for the actual how to do. These are the remedies we teach in a Sabbath afternoon and Sunday seminar. Okay, and this is the traditional hydrotherapy website. Some of you may have been there. This site took me 20 years to build. I started it before internet was and ended with a website. And then 10 years later, I got this one. So it's 30 years to get to this. What you'll find on this page is let me move this. This hamburger menu, they call it. And these are the sections in it. The two we're going to look at tonight are diseases and problems. And we'll start with problems, because often we don't know what the diagnosis of a disease, and the important thing about hydrotherapy, and this is the first principle you need to know. Hydrotherapy for acute conditions is frontline therapy. It's the thing that you do first. So all you have to know is the problem. And here's the list of problems that I've got. All of these came out of textbooks by doctors. The least qualified person was Charles Thomas. Some of you may know of Charles Thomas, who had a PhD in, and so but people more recently, like the Thrashers and Charles Thomas, of course. And so these are all the conditions on that page. So there's a lot of them. So all you have to do is you look up, and I'll take you to morning sickness. Actually, it may be under diseases. Let's have a look. Morning sickness. There it is. So they've got a problem. This will teach you how to do morning sickness, how to treat morning sickness. And this is a very effective treatment. I've used it for my wife, and my son recently used it. And the reason I'm in Adelaide is I'm seeing my grandson's first birthday. So during the pregnancy, he used it on his wife, and he said, "Dad, you need to rewrite that page." So he rewrote the page for me. So it's much clearer now. And you'll notice down the bottom here, so these are the two main textbooks I took things out of, and this page demonstrates. One was Dr. Kellogg's, the first one, Dr. Kellogg's prescriptions. The second one was Dr. Kellogg's Hydriatic techniques. And if you buy Dr. Kellogg's big rational hydrotherapy textbook, nowadays it comes in two books. And I don't think most people need those books because I've summarized them all on here. But these are the two books. One is Prescriptions, one is Hydrotic Techniques. But my favorite hydrotherapist is Dr. George Knapp Abbott. He died, I think, in the 1940s. Well, it's on the website anyway. But he was trained by Dr. Kellogg, but he was a very thoughtful physician, and he taught hydrotherapy to the doctors at Loma Linda. So he was a professor at Loma Linda. And he calls this remedy. So when he says something, I take notice of him because he was intimately involved with the patients and wrote a number of textbooks. But he calls this particular treatment the almost never failing remedy. And that holds up. We use it. Everyone I know who has used it, it has relieved their morning sickness. Women's morning sickness for up to 2 weeks. And anyway, so that's the problems. You don't have to know the disease, but let's go back to let's go up here again, and we'll go to diseases. And so down here, you'll see index of pages in the diseases section. That's what you want to look at. And then you look up a disease. And so the disease I'm going to look at, and you can see all these diseases are treated with hydrotherapy, traditional hydrotherapy. And the disease we're going to look up is typhoid fever. And the reason for that is that the disease that's involved in Mrs. White's story is typhoid fever. And the hydrothermic remedies are people like Dr. Thrash and Charles Thomas and others. That's where I got these parts from. And Dr. Kellogg's prescriptions. And it's important. Well, I read Dr. Kellogg because he gives you more on how to prescribe it and antipyretics. What's interesting about typhoid fever is they have a very high fever. And so the treatment for typhoid fever, and here are all the problems that are involved in the clinical problems. So that's all in the problem section. And so if you click on any of those things, even though they haven't got lines under them, they are linked. So nearly every word in this is linked. And there's all the complications. And there's his techniques. He's got more problems there. But I'll go down to Abbott, and he gives you the daily program for how to treat a person with typhoid. Now, I don't expect you to be treating people with typhoid. It's not very common in Australia. But and by the way, I'm going to rush through the next section quickly. If you've got a question, please write it down because I hope we have some time for questions at the end. Anyway, the general treatment is it's cooling. You cool the patient down. They have very high fever is quite common. Okay. Now, this is the one, the graduated tub bath, just under and this is a very interesting technique, but that's the recommended treatment. And what a graduated tub bath is, you gradually cool the water till it gets down to around about 21 degrees Celsius. I think it's 21. Have a quick look. You go down so many degrees every so often. So you start at 32. So that's a warm bath, and at 22 degrees Celsius. So that's still not cold water, but you don't need cold water. That's the best technique, and you rub them while they're in it too. So you rub the patient to keep them warm. Now, the reason it's like this is it's a production fever. Now, I want to emphasize this today because it's a production fever. That means the body is producing too much heat. And you'll notice typhoid fever is in production fevers. And the fever has a hot, dry skin. And so you use cooling treatments when the skin is hot and dry. All right? And graduated tub bath is the top of the list there. So Now let's go back to fevers, and that's the good thing about this website. It's got lots of links. I can go straight back to fevers up at the breadcrumb one up here, and you'll see all the fevers listed here that they were very good at dividing their problems into sections. So you see all the different sorts of fevers there. The two main ones are production fevers, but most fevers are retention fevers, where the body is actually not producing any more heat than usual. It's just it's retaining it all. And this is, here it says, it's normal or diminished heat elimination. It's seen by cold skin, cyanosis or blue skin, and chilliness and shivering. So people feel cold and they want to get warm. This is the most common form of fever. You'll see in the article, Mrs. White says that 9 out of 10 patients should be treated with heat. And so in these fevers, you use heat. And so we go down and have a look. So hot mitten friction, you start neutral tub bath, wet seat pack, fomentations, hot blanket pack, graduated tub bath. And this is, let's go down to Abbott. He's going to be better. But he links, he's got all the things up here. People feel cold and shivering. And so things like malaria, nearly all the diseases. COVID is a production or a retention fever. So it's hot blanket pack, hot tub bath, heating pack, fomentations, hot water drinking, finishing up with cold mitten friction, quick colds. So the way you treat these diseases, you get people sweating. It's very simple. You get people to sweating anyway except exercise. So you have people I taught in the hills in between Burma and Thailand, the refugees from Burma, from Myanmar. They treat malaria by wrapping the person in the black plastic polythene, lying them in the tropical sun up there, and then rolling them quickly into the cold mountain stream for 2 or 3 seconds. That's all you need, 2 to 3 seconds. But at home, you do a hot tub bath or whatever you've got to get hot. Then you do very brief cold. So in wintertime, where you are in southern WA, that would be 3 to 5 seconds. 3 to 5 seconds of cold, cold shower, then off to bed, warmly dressed. And so the person ends up comfortable, warm, and you should have relieved a lot of the symptoms. One important thing you need to remember when treating a fever, these fevers, any fever, is do not take Panadol or any of the antipyretics that people recommend. They mess up this whole process and they will prolong the process. And I can't wait until the day when they become prescription-only drugs, all the ibuprofen and Panadol type things, because the evidence is very strong, especially with kids. You can prolong a kid's fever by 2 days by giving them Panadol. So don't do it. It's too dangerous. Okay, that's retention fever. All right, that's a whirlwind tour of that. Let's go to our presentation. Okay, let's slide. Why isn't it slide? Okay, I don't usually use. Why isn't it coming up as a slideshow?
Perhaps Bruce, try and hit from the beginning. Will that help?
Oh, okay, this down there.
Yeah, that's it there.
That was partly covered by your picture. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So 1893 it was, and this was written way back in the late 1800s. One of the first duties of the physician is to educate the masses not to take medicine. You probably wouldn't guess, but this is written by the father of modern medicine, Sir William Osler, and he died in 1919 in the big pandemic of that time. But I think he died of a broken heart because his son had been killed the year before in the war in France, and he really missed his son. So Sir William Osler became very much the father of modern medicine. And this textbook, that's the front page of his textbook, the cover, the copyright page, and it's the top-selling textbook in the English-speaking world, medical textbook in the English-speaking world, up until around about 1920, just before 1920, around about 1920, yeah. It was the most popular one, and for good reason. It was the most sensible one. And what's he do for typhoid fever? This is a picture of the page that he starts treatments on, and he starts with typhoid. And you'll notice the first treatment he does is general management. The second one is diet. The third one, see down here, down on the bottom right, is hydrotherapy. Now, he's talking about using a cold bath there, but which was really good. But what they did studies. Typhoid in the around about 1900 would have had about a 25% death rate. 1 in 4 people who got it died. Using this hydrotherapy, and it's not as good as what Abbott and Kellogg recommend, but it's still good. Got it down to a death rate of 3%. The death rate today, with all our modern medical care for typhoid, is just under 2%. So they're nearly as good as they are as we are today. So if you think this is if you think hydrotherapy is not within the pale of medicine, then you're absolutely wrong. Before even drugs, he uses hydrotherapy. It's mainline medicine. It was back then. Can't wait till it is again. The reason we says don't take medicine is humans want to take medicine, and I think that even applies to herbs. We should use hydrotherapy before we use even herbs. You go straight to this. You should know how to treat disease. In children, you give them just warm baths, very simple, and you end up with a quick ice pour on their shoulder, very quick, throwing it over their shoulders and back and put them to bed. Usually 1 treatment on little kids is enough. So on like toddlers and so forth. And we used it on our kids and they all survived to adulthood. Anyway, the psychology of wanting to take pills is unnatural. And this very intelligent man realized that too, as did Mrs. White. Okay, so the first principle of rational hydrotherapy is teach people not to take medicines first off. And I was quite disappointed that during the pandemic, so many people who knew hydrotherapy were also saying, oh, we should take this and that people had recommended as well. And I'm thinking that's not the way it should be. Use simple remedies first. All right. Okay, this story involves Willie White, who was in Australia back in 1893, and his new wife, May Lacey White. So May Lacey was a young woman from Tasmania. She was also Mrs. White's hydrotherapist and massage therapist. So Mrs. White got hydrotherapy 4 nights a week and massage 2 nights a week for evening. So this May Lacey was doing these for Mrs. White, and once a week she had sweating therapy, which is what I told you earlier about. You get people to sweat, and you do a quick cold, and then you put them to bed warmly covered. And so she would do this. She would do that for Mrs. White. Willie White was a widower, and he remarried, and this is who he remarried. And here's a picture of Willie and May and Ellen in 1905. The other person is Sarah McEnteffer. She was Mrs. White's assistant, also a trained hydrotherapist, trained by Dr. Kellogg. And this is it's a letter written to Willie. She was talking to her dear son Willie. This says 1897. Was it? It might have been 1897. Anyway, basically, and you can read this later because there's links on that, on the link page on on that Practical Hydro site. There's all these links are there on. There's a links page that's got all these links on it, links to everything. Basically, the young men who were going to go to Avondale arrived there a year before, and they helped actually build the college. So they sawed down the trees, they put them through the sawmill, they put them up, they painted the buildings, they built their own college. And one of them, his name was Lamplow, Robert Lamplow. He got typhoid fever. Sarah McEnther visited him with your wife, May, so Lily's wife, May, and they both worked over him faithfully, giving heroic treatment. Now, heroic is a technical term. It means cold treatment. So they used the right treatment, didn't they? That's what everyone said you use for typhoid. The fever ran very high, which is typical. We all thought the poor young man was in for a long siege, but they kept at it. They enlisted him. They enlisted Brother Hanson, and we provided food he should eat. And he responded to treatment. And yesterday, so that was May 10th, we can work it out, that's day 4. And this is typical. You do it for 3 days. You do that treatment for 3 days, then you have a day resting, and the person should be actually better by the 4th day for all fevers, even big ones like typhoid. And he was. He wasn't strong. He was quite weak, but he felt well. And that's what you will find if you do these treatments faithfully. I've found that by practice in hospitals as well as privately, and with diseases like dengue and malaria and more recently glandular fever and COVID, of course. They recovered. All right. You start when the symptoms appear. As soon as it appears, you treat them. Now, I'm not going to read all this stuff. You can read it later. This whole presentation is on the links page of that Practical Hydrotherapy website. Or actually, it's on the top of the, well, there's a link to, or you can just tap on Simply Wild. So it's all there. So it takes 3 days, and whereas typhoid fever generally lasted 3 weeks or longer. But this is typical, 3 days down to 3 weeks. Dengue, which is the second, which is the most I've treated, went from, we had people who were 3 weeks, ill for 3 weeks, half of that time they'd be in hospital. We had them back at work in 4 days. Okay, the other person in this who's going to be introduced is Professor Herbert Lacey, who was May's older brother, May Lacey's brother. So this is Mrs. White's daughter-in-law's brother. And he was the first person who actually gave lectures at Avondale. Okay, and the other person is this man here. Is if any of you have read Dave Fiedler's book, Sozo, you'll have heard of the Christian help bands. Alfred Semmons was the head of Christian Help Band number 1. He was a trained nurse. He and his wife were trained nurses from, with Dr. Kellogg, and he was a particular favourite of Dr. Kellogg, and he was the head of health of Christian Help Band number 1, which, if you read DeSozo, Mrs. White never complained about Dr. Kellogg's plans and the way he did Christian help bands, and she complained about every other single project Dr. Kellogg ever did, but never about Christian help bands. Anyway, he's a trained hydrotherapist. Anyway, Brother Lacey, or Professor Lacey, had contracted typhoid down in Tasmania, where he came from, and they had sent him on a train from Hobart up to Launceston, I think it was Launceston, over to Melbourne on a boat, and then on a train from Melbourne up to Sydney. This poor man had 2 weeks in mostly smoking environment. You can imagine how he got there. I'm going to go to the next one. Tasmania to Melbourne, then an excursion train to Sydney. So his wife Lillian went down to meet him, and on the last page, he said he was skin and bones when he got off that train. He could barely even walk. to train in Sydney. And Brother Simmons, so that's that nurse, was using ice on his bowel. At first, he refused to treat him. Let's go back there. Can I go back? Yeah. Now, notice very carefully, Mrs. White said, in several cases, light has been given me that the ice remedy was not as efficacious as hot water. I was afraid his vitality, I learned, was very low, and to put ice on head and chest I knew was a mistake. It would tax his vitality. I asked Sarah if she would go down on the morning train. So this is Sarah McEntifer. She refused promptly. I sent a telegram and I said, use no ice, but hot applications. I felt so sorry. I could not help crying. Mrs. White, this upset Mrs. White enough that it reduced her to tears. Tears of frustration, of fear of that this valuable person was going to be killed by poor treatment. So it would tax his vitality because he was so weak. I asked Sarah and she wouldn't go down. She refused promptly. She did the next best thing, sent a telegram from Churrumbong down to Sydney saying, don't use any cold. And I asked Sarah if she would go. At first she refused and then consented because I felt so bad in regard to this matter. You can read the principles later, but Simmons originally didn't want to treat him. We treat lost causes. Anyway, we'll keep going. Use no ice, use hot applications. While in Sydney, brother, she gives a story about how Simmons had used too much ice on a person and he didn't like it. I want to read this about Herbert, though. He made a mistake here, I know. There must be no risk run over Herbert's case. I'm not going to be so delicate in regard to the physician as to permit Herbert Lacey's life to be put out. I will enclose that which I sent to Brother Simmons. And Sarah went down Wednesday afternoon. Today we shall have a report. I'm very anxious. We are praying for the young man. God will hear us. He will answer our prayers. I do believe the Lord will restore him to health. Okay. This is the main principle that's different in today's hydrotherapy than was previously. Treatments that are disagreeable to the patient, this is written by Dr. Abbott, are rarely effective. If there's nothing other thing you remember from this, if people don't like the therapy, it's not going to work in hydrotherapy. So when you go to a person and you want to know how to treat them, you say, I'm going to cook you up, make you hot until you sweat, and then I'm going to rub you down with ice water. And one of the men who had dengue fever that I treated, when I told him that, we're going to put you in a steam bath. This is in Bangkok Adventist Hospital. And we're going to put you in the steam bath until you're really, really sweating. And then when you feel you can't take any more heat, we're going to come in and rub you down with ice cold water. And he said, that sounds just like heaven. That's what he wanted, and that's the sort of response you get. Dr. Kellogg said, be as emotional as possible. Really put it, we're going to make you really sweat. If they have a retention fever, they will say, that's wonderful. And so with our kids, for instance, they came and asked us for treatment. We didn't even realize they felt bad. They're only little toddlers, and they come up, cold water. Oh, they remembered the cold pour at the end, but it was the warm bath followed by a cold pour. Okay. When Sarah, so she goes in there and then she says we should do ice treatment. I told her it was no use. There might be cases when ice applications would work well, but books with prescriptions that are followed to the letter in regards to ice application should have further explanation. She actually wrote a letter to Dr. Kellogg about how he should change his textbooks. But to just a person with low vitality should use hot in the place of cold, but to go just as the book of Dr. Kellogg shall direct without considering the subject is simply wild. And there are lots of simply wild things going on this time. And here she says, hot fermentations in fever, and it doesn't have to be hot fermentations, but back in that era, they were the best way to heat people up. These days I use a lot of infrared sauna. I think that's far better, but it's still, the principle is the same. You get people sweating. In 9 cases out of 10, where ice applications will, according to the like-of-me, tax the vitality unsafely. And so basically it's 9 out of 10, and I've found that to be true. The vast majority of cases are retention fevers and should be treated with heat. So 9 out of 10 is probably very close to the thing. Now, I'm not going to go through these principles. You can read them later. Anyway, Herbert Lacey survived to teach at Avondale, and there's a lot more of this stuff here. What I want to point out is that cold applications raise fever. They don't reduce it in a retention fever. Okay, there's a lot more here. We won't go through any of that. There's a second letter to back things up. You can read them all later, especially if you do hydrotherapy. It's some really good stuff here. Let's go back again. This is an important thing. She wrote, and you've probably heard this, natural means used in accordance with God's will bring about supernatural results. If you start using hydrotherapy a lot, you will see amazing things happen. We ask for a miracle. The Lord directs the mind to some simple remedy. We ask to be kept from the pestilence that walks in darkness. Anyway, what she says is God leads us to a remedy, and we do the remedy, and then he works with it because we're doing the best we know. And she says we should eat the food further down, which will preserve health of the body. And God gives us no encouragement that he will do for us what we can do for ourselves. If we just sit there and pray for a miracle, he won't work. And hydrotherapy is, I think, one really powerful way. If we put ourselves in God's hand and do faithfully the best we know with hydrotherapy, I think God makes up for all the mistakes, because I certainly made mistakes, especially when I was learning. All right. So now I've got this website, Thermotherapy Now, and what happens in almost every chronic condition is this chronic inflammation is involved in almost any chronic condition you see these days has an inflammatory component. And so you can see the two here, the asthma and inflammatory bowel disease. And so I want to show you what happens when you do those 3 days of heat treatment. What you do is you help the body have a canonical heat shock, which is the green line, quickly up, quickly down, back to homeostasis. You've got this big resolution phase. What happens in chronic disease is that it goes up, and so many people are starting somewhere near the top anyway. So what you have is someone with a chronic disease gets any infectious disease, any fever, they're already halfway to the top. They don't have much further to go for their inflammatory response. And so you get this wavering chronic inflammation line going along. Maybe not quite as high as this picture. I got this out of a paper that you saw the title of just above. But these are conditions with chronic inflammation, and I'm sure people with those diseases. All of those diseases are amenable to treatment with hydrotherapy. 3 days of exactly as we treated, sweating, quick cold, off to bed for at least half an hour, and do that for 3 days. It gets that immune response going. And these are I'm not going to go, that paper that I just headed this section with, these are pictures from that. And I love these colourful little things, and they are beautiful, all the cells in the immune system. I'm not going to go through them. but you are working with this crew. It's not just, if you do hydrotherapy properly, you are helping these people, these little cells do their work, and they are wonderful things. So as I said, single prolonged application of heat, and by prolonged, it's up to 20 minutes, no longer than 20 minutes. Do not do treatments longer than 20 minutes. A very brief cold application. If it's a shower, 3 to 5 seconds is adequate, and you just do it once. And repeat it daily for 3 days. It increases blood flow and body temperature and has wide-ranging effects on circulation, metabolism, immune response, and the nervous system. That's all there. It's very simple to do. And this is what I spent 3 months in the lockdown going through the papers, and this is my picture of what happens. But notice the huge resolution phase. This is where the immune system normally is. Our day-to-day job of our immune system isn't fighting viruses and bacteria and things. It's tissue repair and regeneration. That's its day work. That's what it does normally. And so if we can get people in chronic, that's in acute, you need this first little bump up to start the disease, fighting the disease. But for chronic disease, you need to use the resolution part of the immune response, and that's what thermotherapy or hydrotherapy actually does. Now, I'm just going to leave this up for a second. You don't have to understand, but they're doing these really complicated things. And what frustrates the medical profession no end is that they're all individuals. So your levels of each of these will be different to mine. Every human being has a different setup, but they know what they're doing and they're suited to your body. And so they react at different times. And so throwing even good things like quercetin, for instance, it's a really good thing. It actually, it stops. If we go back to that picture, you'll notice that at the top of the peak there, that quercetin at that point will force it stops the production of heat shock factor number 1, which causes heat shock proteins to be produced. That's one of the things quercetin does. It's a good thing, but you've got about a half-hour period there at the top when it's actually doing what you're paying for. Right at the top, you've got half an hour when it goes from pro-inflammatory to anti-inflammatory, and quercetin will help you do that. If you give it before then, you're actually fighting against the body, trying to force it into inflammatory. If you give it after it, if it's a healthy immune response, the body's already doing it for free. You don't have to tell it to do that. It's really forcing the anti-inflammatory cytokines are pushing the inflammatory response down anyway. So that's what I say about the using chemicals, even if they're good ones. It's still or herbs. It's not. You have to do it really wisely. I think if you're a really good thermotherapist, you would say, or a hydrotherapist, you would say, the inflammation is staying up too long. Maybe I should give quercetin. But I think for most of us aren't good enough, and I certainly am not good enough to know when to give it, because you've only got a half-hour window. Anyway, so that's instead of us giving people drugs, we've got these guys who know exactly what to do at the right time, and they are beautiful things. These pictures don't do them justice. Every one of these cells, when you see them, real pictures of them, are just beautiful, and that's our team. So that's the last part of my slide. So I will go back here and go down to that practical hydrotherapy. So that's the link you've got to. So up the top is links. You go to links. And so down here, you haven't got my phone number, but you've got the traditional hydrotherapy website, UT Pines counselling sheets. I've got a website, Hydro for COVID-19, hydrotherapy for SOZO retreats. It's what we teach people for the retreat therapy. And what I want to talk to you tonight is very quickly there are two things I consider simply wild, and I basically never use them. One is fever baths that last long. So that's a bath that raises the body temperature and you are in it for more than 20 minutes. I believe that's too hard on people's bodies. The second one I consider to be wrong is contrast showers, and I don't use them and I won't use them because I think there were people died in this last pandemic because people use them to treat people. In a contrast shower, it's a tonic treatment. It should never be given to people who are unwell, and it's basically making the body produce more heat. And when a person's sick, they don't need to be producing unnecessary heat when you can heat them up in a bath. So they're the two simply wild things I see today. But I think it was a blessing. God has allowed the world to produce these where they consider time and temperature more important than the patient. Whereas you have Kellogg and Abbott and Thomas and the people at Uchi Pines, Thrashers, the Dr. Thrash, who treated people very gently. The treatments were very gentle, and if the person didn't like it, they would stop. They would change the treatment up. They knew how to do that nicely. Anyway, there's training links down below that. Then there's articles, and there's a Simply Wild Hydrotherapy, and that takes you to this page. And there's the link to the PowerPoint I just did. Okay. Now, what do we do? And I don't know if Benji is still here, but what I would say is for people who come into their lifestyle programs and do what's the name of the program they do? The Masters. What's it called? I've actually done one.
Maker Heals.
Maker Heals, yes. I don't know.
Yeah, we do Maker Heals here.
Do you use hydrotherapy, Benji?
There's no treatment, no hydrotherapy treatment or massage.
Not really.
Or anything like that. Only
that's what you're saying. Not much. I think that's a big oversight. Oversight in the Maker's Heal. I like Maker's Heal, and as I said, I've done a program with Pastor Aurora from Bangkok. What we found with
I agree.
Sorry. But my suggestion is that you do for your because you
I agree. We should use hydrotherapy.
Keep going.
I'm just agreeing with you on hydrotherapy.
Okay, I'll quickly give you what I
workshop now.
Have we frozen?
Simple remedies.
No, we're back again. Okay. What I'm doing now is working with actually dealing with people with fatigue-related illnesses, post-viral conditions, long COVID, so forth. And we're finding we can do. We measure their symptom burden, and in 3 weeks, we can reduce symptom burden on average of around about 68%. So around about 2/3 better. And many of the symptoms that they have after that are don't affect their life. So we have people going back to work after 3 weeks, and they might have had chronic fatigue for 2 or 3 years. The thing is, once you get chronic fatigue for more than 3 years, something happened. Well, somewhere between 3 and 5 years into a chronic fatigue, their physiology changes. Their symptoms aren't quite as bad, so they can live with the disease, but they certainly aren't well either. And it sort of gets fixed. And in those ones, we find it really hard to make a dent if that's happened. So somewhere between 3 and 5 years in, which kind of scares me about the pandemic because it's now 4 years in. And I think we might have passed the time when we can help some people. with long COVID anyway. What we do is we do those 3 days of thermotherapy. At the same time, we start breathing therapy. And I work at the Attune Clinic, and those of you who have been to Newcastle, it's not an Adventist place, but it's a Christian centre. There's about 100 therapists and doctors working there. And we have 2 Adventist doctors there. We have an Adventist psychologist, and there's about 10 people on the psychology team. There's a lot of osteopaths. None of them are Adventist, but and none of the physios are. But we have a number of Adventists there, and they run the conference actually sponsored a restaurant, a vegetarian vegan restaurant at this centre, and they run a spiritual health program on Sabbath mornings, and on Sabbath afternoons they do a Bible study, and which is sort of basically the Sabbath school lesson, but taught without the lesson pamphlet. Well, not taught, it's a Bible discussion group. And so it's sort of a church. And so that's kind of, that's where I work. And so there's a Christian breathing therapist there, Dean O'Rourke, who, to me, it's back to the early days of when I was doing hydrotherapy. When you combine the power on the immune system from the thermotherapy, and we use infrared sauna, as I said before, till people sweat, and then we either have them in wintertime, they often have, about half the time, people choose to go into the cold shower for 3 to 5 seconds to wash the sweat off. Then we put pressure cuffs on their legs, because we do it in a recovery centre, a sports recovery centre, and lots of sports people, especially in running sports, after a soccer game, they'll come and they'll put compression cuffs, pumps on their legs, and their recovery time really improves. And so we put them on after the cold shower, or from day 2 and day 3 of that program, we put them in cryotherapy tanks, which go down to about minus 120 degrees. And that's right. So we call it a 180-degree turnaround, because they get to 60 degrees in the infrared and down to minus 120 in the other, and maximum of 3 minutes. The second day we do it 2 minutes, the third day 3. It's the gentlest form of heat I know, far better than of cold that I know, far better than ice baths. You feel really cold, but you don't get cold. And the most common usage of that is people with chronic depression. It gives you a lift that lasts about a week, 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks, yeah. So people get a real boost in their, makes a big difference to people, but it's really gentle, and that's why I like it. But I don't think you necessarily need that at a health retreat, but I would recommend getting the best infrared sauna you can, and that should be one that has short near range infrared on it too, because it heats up much quicker. And you've probably heard about all the great benefits that you get from near range infrared too, because it's because it penetrates up to 5 centimeters into us and makes huge differences with large numbers of things in our body. Beautiful stuff, because you can even sunbake in the shade and still get the same effect with your clothes on. And you get, so basically you sit in the shade and you get treatment with, but you can get it in the sauna too, but it heats up the sauna much quicker. And so infrared sauna followed by a cold shower. And I would recommend that for the first 3 days of a live-in program, something like Sozo or in Maker Heels, during the time when people are on their fast. And then after 3 days, then try the other. And I certainly wouldn't try wouldn't try the contrast showers unless people like them and ask for them until maybe they've been there a week and we're used to dealing with hot and cold. Yeah. Anyway, that's my suggestion and that's my talk tonight. So does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much, Bruce. That was fantastic, and thank you for all the work that you've done on the websites and all the links that we have. You've made it just so available for everybody. Thank you so much. Benji, you asked some questions in the chat, or shall we can come to those a bit later? If anyone else has any questions.
It was very powerful. Thank you very much. It just reminded me when I did my nursing in Adventist American Hospital in Iraq.
When did you do that, Anita?
It was a revision for me, what you said. In 1956, I was in Iraq, and we had an American Adventist hospital. I did my nursing there, and they used to teach us how to do all that to the patients instead of write prescription for drugs. So I know quite a bit, but many years ago it happened, you know. So it was a revision for me. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good on you, Anita. Yeah. And did you learn to do it gently? You followed the patient, didn't you? Is that what?
Whatever doctor has ordered to the patients to be treatment,
okay,
we just carry on that. Yeah. Mainly hot and cold compressors and all that, bath seating, you know. I've got all the pictures as well taken. That was a long time ago. But when I finished 3 years, unfortunately, the Iraqi government took over the hospital, and I had to go to Libya, Benghazi, Libya, to do my extra, you know, work for them for 1 year without any payment. Yeah.
No, good.
And we carried on the same way over there. Yeah. I believe in this.
And you probably have many good stories from it too.
Yes and no. I mean, that's happened years ago. And when I was working in Perth, in the hospitals, they don't allow to do that.
No, they don't.
Many times I do this.
I think it's actually been a blessing, though, that the world hasn't got hold of it, and that's been done poorly too, because it means that when we do it right, it will make a big impression.
That's right. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Anita.
You're welcome.
I've got a question, Bruce, if that's all right. Bruce, I don't want to make this, like a consulting session for you, but while I've got you, I've got bursitis in my right shoulder. And so I've been doing contrast showers, 3 minutes of hot, 30 seconds of cold, 3 cycles. And I found at the end of that, the pain's a lot less and I'm able to, move it more freely. So, but would you recommend the sweating, getting the sweating up and then doing the 3 to 5 seconds in the shower?
You don't have any other, there are no other major health problems.
No. Well, I've obviously got inflammation.
Yeah, but I don't, if you're well otherwise, I wouldn't, if you like, yes, you will get symptomatic relief with there's nothing wrong with using as a tonic the contrast showers.
Yeah.
It's just you don't treat disease with them.
Right. So it's symptom relief, is it?
Yes, you're getting symptomatic relief, but that's good. Symptomatic relief means when you're using natural things, symptomatic relief means that, because all a symptom is your body telling you there's something wrong, do something about this, fix this. Exactly. And so there's nothing wrong with that. What I would recommend, just offhand, is an ice massage. So if you look the ice massage up on the website, basically you freeze something full of ice water, full of water, you freeze it. So back in the days when you could get styrofoam cups, they are the perfect thing for it. It would split the cup, but it means you can hold the ice block without getting cold fingers. And rub it over the bursa, over the sore part. Keep it moving for 15 minutes. So do it where you can see a clock.
Yeah.
And if it's going to work, you'll find about 5 minutes in, it will get that really deep pain. You know, like when you go to the snow and you get really cold hands.
Yeah.
You get that deep cold. You feel it going right in. You'll feel that, and it will be quite painful. But keep going.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, it will be numb. And what you do is, so you keep it moving over the area because you'll get frostbite with straight ice. And so with the styrofoam, you would peel the styrofoam off, so it would. And you would probably get for a shoulder, at least two sessions out of a styrofoam cup. But you can put in a plastic or paper cup, or you can actually buy things that do it. But ice works fine. And make sure you got a towel under you. And 15 minutes by the clock. And after that, you feel it, and it should be numb. It should have. It should feel like. I haven't felt it for a long time, but when you get a chicken out of the freezer, it should feel like that. Really, it should feel like you've just come out of, like it's meat taken out of the freezer. That's what it should feel like. And it's what it does is the cold actually goes. Well, it doesn't actually go in, but it extracts heat from about 1 centimeter in, which is plenty for a shoulder bursa. So if you do that for 3 days in a row, there's something about 3 days. And then reassess. If it's helping, then you can do it. But have a rest at least every 3 days. You only need to do it daily for 3 days. And what you'll find, if it's going to work, is that it won't necessarily go away. But you know how if it's true bursitis, you'll catch it every now and then. It sort of feels good most of the time, and then you do something. You'll find that's happening less often. It will still happen, but it will be maybe 10 days between or something.
Right.
So it won't go away. It sort of stops it occurring as much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Oh, now we've got a hand up there for more questions. Jason?
Yeah. I just wanted to ask about the ice baths. There seems to be a pretty big craze at the moment with ice baths. People are just.
I'm not sure if I'm
buying these. No. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? I mean, in terms of the usage of it and the benefits and
use of
the ice baths. So saying people are buying these ice baths. They're selling them now. I think in not IKEA. What's the other one? Yeah.
Okay, and the Wim Hof people. Wim Hof was recommending. Look, if you like them, do them. What I've noticed, Jason, is that there are a lot of people who have chronic fatigue, who have passed that 3 to 5 years mark, who really are attracted to ice. They like ice. They're scared of the sauna instead of being scared of, I'm looking forward to going to minus 120 degrees, but I don't know about a sauna. Whereas most people, it's the other way around. Something's going on in their immune system, and we can't help them a great deal. There's nothing wrong with an ice bath.
Yeah.
But I don't think most of us need them. What is the problem that you're interested in solving with it?
I think I've noticed that people with sort of low immune system is a way that they claim that it boosts the immune system, and also helps with dopamine reset.
It does.
But in terms of the overall health benefit, I'm not so certain.
Yeah. All right. Look, it will do both those things. It does, but it's not the gentlest way to do it. And but if you enjoy it, it will help you for sure. I've had one ice bath in my life, and I've rolled in the frost after a sauna, a traditional sauna. So I've done some cold, and I've been swimming in winter in Victoria, and that's but it's not something I look forward to. Whereas a cryotherapy session I do, but they're quite expensive. They're like $80 a session. They're not cheap. But if you only have 3 of them, that's fine. But what I would say is, if you want to boost your immune system, do that 3-day. If there's a reason for it, do that 3-day program. It will do it much better and much more comfortably, and you'll be able to do it at home. You don't need to buy anything special if you've got a bathtub or some way of heating yourself. But
okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
And breathing therapy, by the way, as I probably didn't explain well enough, with chronic disease, it's a team sport. Treating a chronic disease, you have to change all the 8 remedies. So you have to get people breathing low and slow. You have to stop this. There's a real push for deep breathing, where they're breathing with the top of their chest, big breath, which actually is counterproductive. And we need to do the proper breathing therapy, like basically Buteyko sort of breathing therapy. But the breathing therapist we work with here, I work with in Attune, he will train people so that he picked on me. He says, "Bruce, you're a mouth breather." I didn't believe it, but he stopped my snoring. I don't snore now, and I have much more energy because it affects your whole metabolism, because everything is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, and so if breathing is the biggest lever we have on the autonomic nervous system. So he can stop chronic headaches and so forth in a month. People who are on IVF and so forth, their hormones and their ovulation and so forth all return back to normal, all within a month of breathing therapy. Amazing stuff, absolutely incredible stuff. And nearly everybody who has a chronic disease has major breathing issues. In our society, due to our inactivity, due to our posture, due to what we're doing now, sitting in front of a computer too much, it's just, breathing is an epidemic far bigger than COVID ever was.
Thank you, Bruce. Does anyone have any other questions at all?
I noticed someone mentioned about training programs. If you go through that front page, go through all the treatments, learn the treatments on that front page of my practical hydrotherapy site, that will be fine for people who work at home, and even in clinics. Just go through those. There's good instructions, and on the Hydro for COVID site, there are a number of videos. The only complaint I have about one of the videos is, and that's the 3rd person in our team who works with. We have a 10-person team. Most of them are in the rehab side of things, but the prehab side is thermotherapy, breathing therapy, and naturopathy. So that's the herbal and dietary side. They talk a lot about diet. And so with those 3 combined, we make a big difference with all sorts of things, ranging from lupus and all the autoimmune things right through chronic fatigue-related problems. It makes quite big differences all within a matter of weeks.
That's fantastic. Bruce, you're in South Australia, aren't you?
No, I live in New South Wales. I'm here for my grandson's first birthday.
Yeah. So, like, if people want to chat to you or just discuss more, can they send you an email?
Yes, my email and my phone, you can message me, because I don't answer numbers that I don't know, that aren't sort of listed in my contacts.
Yes, of course.
So, but my phone number's there, so you can message me or email me. So it's all on that links page. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I actually enjoyed, because it's like tonight, I learn things by people asking me questions.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, I've got a few questions, but I think I'll send you an email because they're, just regarding an extended family member, but I will send you an email, I think. And, sorry, you go.
No, Benji just put up something about which part of the body. I should mention this specifically. If you're going to give a quick cold treatment, make sure you hit the back of the neck, the nape of the neck, because that's where our most sensitive, when somebody puts an ice block down the back of your neck, everyone jumps, but you can do that to other parts of the body and they don't jump, because that's where our cold sensors are. And so if you're going to pour it on people, and by the way, when you do your kids, you get them sitting in the bathtub and you quickly throw it on. So that's my only complaint. There's a video about a child getting a tepid tub bath, which is what you give to kids who have fevers. And my naturopath friend poured the water on nice and slowly. That's not kind. You throw it on real quickly, then get the kid out. He said about the temple, that's when you're cooling them in the water. Benji. In the heat, you put it on their temples to it's got a reflex effect. It's a bit hard to do nicely, but it probably does. But anyway, we pour it on the back of the neck and that works fine. I'm not sure about that. I haven't. I know we cool them with packs across their temple and forehead. Yeah. Anyway, any other questions?
I just wanted to ask Bruce too, like if the people that are in Western Australia that are watching now or will look at the YouTube later, where can they reach out? I know, Benji, you have at the retreat, you do a lot of therapy, but you don't do hydrotherapy. Where else do you know of people in WA that are doing similar to what you're doing?
No, I don't. No, not offhand.
Okay, fine.
But,
yeah.
Look, well, the way I work with people who are away from where I am, or some distance from Newcastle, where I work, where I live, I'm willing to talk to. So we get people with cancer. We don't treat the cancer as such, but what we do is a program where they do those 3 days straight after they get the chemo, and it makes the chemo work better, and but most importantly, it decreases the side effects of the chemo. So where you got people be bad for 5 days after, mostly, well, the man who I've had the most contact with, he has these after his chemo treatments, which he gets I forget how often, but he goes for 3 days thermotherapy and he's better the next day. So he's had 3 days when he's felt lousy, and he has like a whole weekend. He says, I've got 2 really good days extra, because he's where he was normally sick, still feeling crook from the chemo.
Yeah. So you offer like a consultancy, service.
So he actually came and saw me, and we worked on that. But and we're getting more of those because we have an oncologist now come into the centre, and so we're going to be talking about that in the future. Yeah.
Fantastic. Any other questions at all?
There was one up here, yes. Dr. Ramirez. I can only see the meeting chat. I can't see if it's going on YouTube. But Dr. Ramirez, Look, I know Dr. Ramirez, but he's not a trained hydrotherapist, and he's recommending cold showers. This is one of the same with Neil Nedley. I've done the help facilitate the depression recovery programs. I tell people, if you really love hot and cold showers, 3 minutes of hot, 30 seconds of cold, repeated 3 times. If that's something you really love, do it. Otherwise, every morning, have a hot shower and turn it up a little bit so it makes you really hot, because you know you're going to get cold, and then finish with 3 to 5 seconds, especially on the back of your neck, of cold water, just long enough to go and breathe in through your nose. It's important to breathe through your nose all the time. That's cold. That's all you need. Long enough for it to go, that's cold, turn it off. So you turn the hot up a little bit at first, just so you get not really warm, a bit too warm, and then off and up with the cold. 3 seconds, plenty. So that will achieve as much as, no, it won't achieve as much. Yes, thermotherapy for a well person, the contrast showers for a well person will increase their immune cells. For someone who's sick, you don't, unless they really love hot and cold showers, you are far better off doing the heat than cold. And that comes from Mrs. White too. You treat disease with heat, generally, in nearly every case, 9 out of 10 cases.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Any other questions? So I'm just mindful of the time. We've kept you so long, Bruce.
That's all right. I noticed everyone else is up in the house.
Benji, you've just, the quick cold application, which part of the body should be hit by the cold water?
Yeah, I spoke to that one. The nape of the neck.
I'm getting a delayed reaction here. Oh, yes, I can, yeah. Well, thank you very much, Bruce. Would you like to close in prayer for us, Bruce, please?
I would love to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Myra, and thank you all for coming and listening to me and asking questions, and you're welcome to get in touch in future if you wish. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, thank you for loving us so much. Thank you for being gentle with us. Thank you for making us part of your team, even though we have failed you so much in the past and have never been and have never reached the standards that you hope we have in the past. But today, from now on, I pray that each one of us here who's been here will treat people with gentleness when they do their hydrotherapy, and will not just treat people gently, but reflect your care for them in such a way that they will realize that there's some difference in the way we think about them, not just as patients, not just as people who we treat to raise for money, but that we really do care, that your love will shine through us, even the weak jars of clay that we are. Lord, each person here tonight, I pray that you will inspire their minds when they face a problem to use the simple remedies, and also that you'll help them to guide through the vast lists in the website too, that they'll find the right one. Lord, and we've been promised that you would give us, that you would lead our minds to a simple remedy, and I pray that the people here tonight will find that. So next time there's a problem, next time someone is feeling sick, next time someone has morning sickness, they'll say, oh, let me look that up. And Lord, that you will work through the simple things we do and make up for any of the mistakes we make. Thank you for your love for us, Father, and we ask in the name of your blessed Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 Well, thank you very much,
Bruce.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Myra.
Bruce.
Bruce.